Globally, we have one common theme, and that is too much debt. And today we will discuss how this debt is piling up and beginning to drown the economy. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. We have so much to cover today, a lot of points that I want to touch on, and first we will begin with the big news, and that is Greece. For those of you who don't know, I'll just fill you in. There is a new government in Greece, and they are saying no to the Troika, no to the IMF, and all of the austerity measures. And of course, this is causing a problem, specifically because Greece is heavily in debt. And there are many reasons for this, but today I want to discuss a few points from this article out of the Telegraph. On this basis, the Greek authorities expressed their intention to request a 6-month technical extension of the current program as an intermediate step. This would bridge the time for the Greek authorities to work on a follow-up arrangement. So they want basically more time, which would allow them to get the deals in place. And further down, they said to replace the bailout, Greece is seeking a bridging arrangement worth up to $21 billion that would allow the government in Athens breathing space to implement radical economic reforms. The problem that they're seeing on the other end is that this is money going to waste, according to them. They're not going to be able to have these reforms in place and are just going to need more money. Of course, they don't want to take the bailouts. They did accept some temporary funding under the ELA, but of course that money will run out very quickly. They need to get this all sorted out by the 26th when their lifeline runs out. So we're going to move on quickly right here to the article out of the Independent. There is no alternative to a request to an extension of the program, according to the European Commission's Economic and Finance Affairs Commissioner. They're really speaking very heavily on these topics right now, getting very serious with Greece, but it seems like the Greek government is just saying no. And then they said, it's up to the Greek authorities now to decide whether they would want such an extension. So this is coming from both sides. There was a very strong opinion across the whole Eurogroup that it had to come from the Greek authorities. They have to make up their mind whether they will ask for an extension of the current program. This consistently reminds me of what's happening in the US every few months with the debt ceiling. They just expand upon their debt. They get to the very last moments, make it a crisis, and of course the debt ceiling is increased. And it happens over and over and over again. It seems like a broken record. It just happens every single time simply because of all the politics involved right here. They're unable to make a decision. So we'll have to see what happens in Greece. The 26th, of course, of February is the really that key moment, but things could happen before. However, it seems like it always happens at the last moment, or sometimes even too late, as we've seen. Now, what exactly happened to Greece to bring it into such a bad scenario? Part of that are the collateralized debt obligations, credit default swaps, and in the US we have the mortgage-backed securities. Basically, I'm trying to get to the derivatives. If you don't know what derivatives, I'll discuss that in a moment. Let's go into this right here where we have the issuance of asset-backed securities in the US. This is just one example that I've found of recent information, and you can see this: auto, home equity, total, others, credit cards, student loans. We have a whole mixture right here. And essentially, it's saying that there is a significant decline from the peak. However, it has been moving up steadily since the crisis, and that is very worrisome to me. And this is exactly what brought us into that chaos in the first place. We had credit default swaps, which is basically insurance on certain countries. And when Goldman Sachs took out this type of insurance on the nations that they were bringing down, that is how they're able to control and manipulate people using economics. It is a currency war that takes place, and they're able to do so using these mega weapons the derivatives. So when you're talking about trillions upon trillions of dollars moving within a system, you can pull a country down, and you can do this intentionally, or it could be just luck of the draw. But that is what happened within Greece, and we have seen what derivatives, the power of derivatives. Look at this, after a few years of getting the Troika in, making all these decisions, Greece has nearly doubled the amount of debt to GDP that they are in, and this new government has a very long uphill battle to go into. Now let's get into this. This happens to be a derivative here. I'm just showing you what would be a mortgage-backed security, but it's just a cartoon illustration. Somebody has their home, just a random person, random citizen has their home, and of course they have a mortgage on that. The mortgage actually belongs to the bank. So then the bank takes that paper note and it puts it into a big pile, and then they take a bunch of those and then they wrap it up in a little present and put a pretty bow on top, and then they take that and they sell it to an investor. Now whether this is a CDO, CDS, MBS, or any other type of derivative, it all essentially works like this. This is a general description of that. And essentially, you have these investors looking up, or investment companies, looking up different ways to make more money in the hard times, or perhaps even in the good times when they're looking for some extra wealth to accumulate. And here we are, with derivatives offering them that option. Now you saw in the previous graph how it is definitely down significantly over the financial crisis time, but it's climbing up. So we're heading back into the exact same territory that we were a few years ago. So that's that. I want to move on because people are looking for what are the type of assets that they should be investing into. Well, farmland is something I still recommend despite what this article out of the NASDAQ is showing you. Farmland values in parts of the Midwest fall for the first time in decades. Very important information. Land values are extremely high, typically with this in the Midwest, parts of the Midwest anyway. The average price of farmland in the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago's district, which includes Illinois, Iowa, and other big farm states, fell 3% in 2014, making the first annual decline since 1986. Now, any asset class that's going for this long is essentially possibly in a bubble. That's definitely not something to deny. However, when you look at the other assets like stocks that have been booming over the past few years in such a dramatic rise, you have to really weigh out your options. Farmland isn't something you buy to make really a large amount of profit off of. You're basically buying that in order to hold your value over a long period of time. There's no possibility of these prices declining in extremely rapid manner that stocks could. Yes, they absolutely could have their downfall. There's no doubt about that. But when you buy farmland, when you're buying different types of land, or even certain real estate investments, you shouldn't be there to flip these houses. That is not what you should be doing. You want to have this to basically maintain your wealth over generation and generation. See, these, if you had bought a piece of farmland back in 1986, you would progressively have made certain amounts of income over that time. But of course, you're not going to cash in on that. You're going to hang on to it because farmland and other types of land are essential and are definitely worth a lot of money. Let's get into this right here, where we had the banking heist yielding up to $1 billion. So if you haven't heard about this, this article happens to be out of the USA Today, but it has been making waves. They basically were hacking into a bunch of banks, taking a large amount of money, and they said that the victims were mostly Russian-speaking financial institutions. So quite interesting to see how they're able to hack in. We have currency wars, we have cyber wars that take place, and this could be some foul play, not just necessarily any random hacker, but it could be some actual threats from other countries. That's something that we need to think about because they don't do things just really straight to the book all the time. There are much foul play at hand. So this is something I just wanted to note to bring up to you this information. Right here, we have many of the banker suicides and murders that have been taking place, and this is something else altogether. Hedge fund manager allegedly faked death to avoid redemption. So here's one individual actually faking his own death so he didn't have to pay out to the customer. A New York hedge fund manager who was running an alleged fraud went to great lengths to avoid giving investors their money back, including telling an investor he had died of a heart attack. Now, this is just one example I'm trying to show you, but I can see how the financial system is decaying, how the debts are piling up in every single sector, whether that's the individual person, whether that's the corporations, or whether that's the actual nations themselves, all running into too much debt. Now, these individuals in the finance industry are seeing this debt pile up. They are seeing what's at the end of the tunnel, and I assure you it is not a bright white light for them, that's for sure. So we see a lot of foul play that has been existing. And right here, the last thing I wanted to note is the incarceration level. You have crime up to new highs. Now, of course, some of this crime shouldn't exactly be here because we have seen that there are many non-violent offenders that have been making their way into the jail system. And I also want to note, the reason why I mention this is the debtors' prisons. This is very worrisome to me because we have individuals who are essentially being put in jail for not paying up their fines. This is really a touchy subject in many ways. However, I feel that they could be expanding this program, and we have seen there is no shortage of incarceration in the United States, and as a matter of fact around the world, but definitely the US leading the pack here. And this is something that I just wanted to note to you as well. Look for the debtors' prisons, how they're being used today, and how they are expanding these policies as conditions in the economy get worse. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that a lot. I'm reading all your comments, getting back to all your emails. I've almost got to all the emails. There's only a handful or two left in there, so I'm trying to get back to you all. And of course, you can always email me. It might take me a little while to get back to you, but assuredly I will do so. And the last but not least, don't forget to become an insider. The Insiders is where I give out all my best intel for free, and that is available at themoneygps.com. You just scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.